Snow fell softly over the Upper West Side townhouse, blurring the streetlights and muting the city into a fragile calm. Inside, Hannah Miller moved slowly across the living room, one hand supporting her heavy belly, the other rocking her 5-month-old daughter against her chest. The baby's warm breath soaked through Hannah's sweater, grounding her in the only certainty she had left. The Christmas tree glowed beside the window, decorated with simple ornaments she had unpacked alone while Victor worked late again. At 31, Hannah had learned how silence could be louder than shouting. Victor's absence was routine now, explained away by meetings, deadlines, and urgent calls taken behind closed doors. His MacBook still sat open on the dining table, spreadsheets frozen on the screen, untouched dinner growing cold beside it. Hannah did not touch his things. She never did. She lowered herself onto the sofa, her back aching, her breath shallow. Money had become another quiet fear. That morning, her card had declined at the grocery store, the cashier offering an apologetic smile while shoppers waited behind her. Victor controlled the accounts. He said it was easier that way. Hannah told herself it was temporary. Everything was always temporary, until it wasn't. Outside, a car door slammed. Hannah's heart jumped. She adjusted the baby's blanket just as the front door opened. Victor stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat, his face tight and distracted. He did not kiss her. He did not look at the tree, or the baby, or the carefully wrapped gifts by the fireplace. Instead, he checked his phone, the screen lighting his features in cold blue. "Long night," he said, already walking past her. Hannah nodded. She wanted to ask something ordinary. Safe. "Did you eat? Are you tired? Do you still love me?" None of the words came out. Victor's phone buzzed again. He stopped. For a fraction of a second, Hannah saw a name flash across the screen before he turned it away. Lauren. The name lodged itself in her chest like a shard of glass. Victor frowned, silenced the call, and slipped the phone into his pocket. "I have to take a quick shower," he said. His voice was controlled, too controlled. Hannah watched him disappear upstairs. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She told herself she was overreacting. Pregnancy made emotions unreliable. That was what Victor always said. Minutes passed. The baby stirred, letting out a small whimper. Hannah stood again, walking toward the kitchen to warm a bottle. Her foot brushed against Victor's phone, now face down on the counter, forgotten in his rush. The screen lit up with a new message. "Merry Christmas, can't wait anymore." Hannah froze. The house suddenly too quiet, the lights too bright, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Upstairs, water began to run, steady and loud, masking every other sound in the house. Hannah's hands trembled as she locked the phone and set it back where it was, as if touching it longer might burn her. She pressed her forehead against the counter, fighting dizziness, the baby's weight anchoring her to the floor. Somewhere beneath the fear, a realization formed, slow and terrifying. Whatever Victor was hiding was already inside their home, breathing the same air, waiting for the right moment. And Hannah, pregnant, exhausted, and alone, had no idea that this Christmas night was about to become the most dangerous hour of her life. The silence felt heavier than snow, promising pain, truth, and consequences ahead. Hannah did not sleep that night. She lay awake on the narrow bed, her daughter curled beside her, listening to the pipes groan and the shower stop upstairs. Victor never came to check on them. The house felt divided by floors, like a fault line waiting to split. Every sound made her flinch, every creak reminding her how vulnerable she was in a place that no longer felt like home. At dawn, pale winter light slipped through the curtains. Hannah eased herself up, joints stiff, head pounding. She carried her daughter into the kitchen and reached for her wallet. Telling herself yesterday had been a mistake. When she tried again to buy formula online, the screen flashed a cold message. "Account restricted. Please contact primary holder." Her throat tightened. Primary holder meant Victor. Always Victor. She checked another account, then another, all locked. Savings, emergency fund, even the small freelance payments she earned on her MacBook were inaccessible. Hannah sank into a chair, one hand gripping the table, the other pressed against her stomach as the baby inside her shifted uneasily. Panic crept in slowly, like rising water. She had no cash, no credit, no family nearby. If something happened, she had nowhere to go. Victor came downstairs dressed for work, calm and efficient, as if nothing had changed. He poured coffee into a travel mug, scrolling through emails. Hannah watched him, searching his face for guilt or concern. There was none. I couldn't access the accounts, she said quietly. Victor didn't look up. There was a security issue. I froze them temporarily. For how long? Her voice shook despite her effort. As long as necessary, he replied. You worry too much. Hannah felt something crack inside her. Worry was all she had left. She looked at her daughter, then back at Victor. I need money for the baby. For the hospital. I'm 8 months pregnant. Victor finally met her eyes. His gaze was flat, irritated. I said I'm handling it. Don't start drama today. Drama. The word stung more than anger would have. Hannah nodded, swallowing everything she wanted to say. Victor grabbed his coat and keys, pausing only to glance at his phone before leaving. The door closed with a final click that echoed through the house. The hours crawled. Hannah fed her daughter the last of the formula, counting scoops carefully. She packed a small bag, just in case, though she didn't know where she would go. She tried calling Victor. Straight to voicemail. She texted, no reply. By afternoon, the doorbell rang. Hannah's heart raced as she opened the door to find a woman standing there, perfectly composed, holding a neatly wrapped gift bag. She was young, stylish, confident in a way Hannah no longer felt. I'm Lauren, the woman said smoothly. Victor asked me to drop something off. Hannah stared at her, every instinct screaming danger. Lauren's eyes flicked briefly to Hannah's belly, then to the baby in her arms. A smile curved her lips, polite and cold. Merry Christmas, Lauren added, stepping inside without waiting for permission. Hannah stepped back, the walls closing in around her. She did not know it yet, but this was the moment her quiet suffering turned into open war. Fear hardened into resolve as Hannah clutched her child tighter. Snow continued falling outside, indifferent and silent. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that survival would demand courage she never knew she possessed. Lauren's presence was no accident. This visit was a warning, and Hannah understood, too late, that escape would no longer be simple. Tonight changed everything forever, irrevocably. Lauren moved through the living room as if she belonged there, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. Hannah closed the door behind her, every muscle tense, her arms tightening around her daughter. The gift bag swung gently from Lauren's wrist, glossy paper reflecting the Christmas lights like a cruel joke. I hope I'm not interrupting, Lauren said, setting the bag on the coffee table without asking. Her eyes traveled slowly across the room, lingering on the tree, the baby toys, the framed wedding photo on the shelf. Victor said you wouldn't mind. Hannah swallowed. He's not here. I know. Lauren smiled, thin and deliberate. That's why I came. The words settled heavily between them. Hannah felt the baby inside her shift, a dull pressure reminding her to breathe. She lowered herself onto the sofa, careful, controlled. Lauren remained standing, dominant, surveying. I brought documents, Lauren continued, opening the bag. Inside were folders, crisp and organized. Work-related. Victor gets forgetful. Hannah stared at the folders. A memory flashed of Victor guarding his phone, his laptop always angled away. You work late, Hannah said, surprising herself. Lauren laughed softly. We all do. Silence stretched. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, then faded. Lauren finally sat, crossing her legs with practiced ease. You look tired, she said. Pregnancy must be hard. Hannah nodded. She refused to rise to the bait. What do you want? Lauren's smile sharpened. I want honesty. From you. She leaned forward. Victor isn't happy. The words landed like blows. Hannah felt heat rise to her face. That's between us. Is it? Lauren tilted her head. He talks to me about everything. His stress, his frustrations, his feeling of being trapped. Trapped. Hannah's hands shook. She adjusted the blanket around her daughter, focusing on the baby's steady breathing. If you're here to hurt me, she said quietly, you can leave. Lauren's expression flickered, then hardened. I'm here to help you see reality. This marriage is over. A knock interrupted them. Hannah's heart jumped. Lauren stood instantly, smoothing her coat. That must be him. But when Hannah opened the door, Victor's father stood there, snow dusting his shoulders, eyes sharp and assessing. Samuel Miller stepped inside without a word, his gaze moving from Hannah to Lauren, then to the folders on the table. What's going on? Samuel asked calmly. Lauren stiffened. I was just leaving. Samuel didn't move aside. "Sit." The authority in his voice froze the room. Lauren hesitated, then slowly sat back down. Hannah felt a strange surge of relief mixed with fear. Samuel turned to Hannah, his eyes softening. "Are you all right?" he asked. Hannah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She shook her head slightly, tears burning. Samuel nodded, as if he understood more than she had said. "This conversation," Samuel said evenly, looking at Lauren, "is not over." Lauren's confidence cracked for the first time. Hannah realized then that forces beyond her control had begun to move. Whatever Victor was hiding had reached a point of no return. And in this house, on this night, truths were about to surface that would destroy lives forever. No one noticed the baby begin to cry softly, the sound fragile but insistent. Hannah held her closer, feeling a promise form inside her fear. She did not know how or when, but she would protect her children. The night had crossed a line. There would be no turning back now, only consequences waiting in the shadows ahead. Justice, pain, and truth would collide soon, and nothing Victor built would survive after this night ends. Samuel closed the door slowly, the click of the lock sounding louder than it should have. Snow pressed against the windows, sealing the house off from the rest of the city. Lauren sat rigid on the sofa, her confidence drained, while Hannah stood near the dining table, rocking her crying baby with shaking arms. "Victor didn't mention you were coming," Lauren said, forcing a laugh. "He didn't mention a lot of things," Samuel replied. He removed his coat and placed it carefully over a chair, a habit from decades in courtrooms. "You should explain why you're here." Lauren glanced at Hannah, then back at Samuel. "Work." "I already said that." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "You're not his assistant." Lauren's jaw tightened, silence pressed down on the room. Hannah felt dizzy, her chest tight as the baby's cries echoed off the walls. She lowered herself into a chair, afraid her legs would give out. "I heard my name," Victor's voice called from upstairs. Footsteps followed. Victor appeared at the landing, towel around his neck, face pale when he saw his father. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Samuel didn't answer right away. He gestured toward the living room. "Come down." Victor descended slowly. His eyes flicked to Lauren, then to Hannah. The tension was visible, thick and undeniable. "What is she doing here?" Hannah asked, her voice barely steady. Victor sighed, irritation flashing. "This isn't the time." Lauren stood abruptly. "Victor, you said you'd handle this." "Sit," Samuel ordered again. Victor clenched his fists. "Dad, this is my house." Samuel looked at him evenly. "Not tonight." The words landed heavy. Hannah felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. Victor's gaze darkened. "You're overstepping." Samuel turned to Lauren. "Say his name." Lauren hesitated. "Victor." "Not that," Samuel said. "The name you use when you think no one is listening." Lauren's face drained of color. She swallowed. "V." Hannah's breath caught. The sound of it confirmed everything she feared. Victor exploded. "Enough. This is ridiculous." He stepped toward Hannah, his movements sharp. "You're making a scene." Hannah instinctively stood, clutching the baby tighter. "I didn't invite her." Victor's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Pain flared. The baby cried harder. "Let go," Hannah whispered. "Victor," Samuel warned. But Victor didn't stop. His face twisted with anger and panic. "You're ruining everything." In one violent motion, his hand moved from her wrist to her throat. Hannah gasped, air stolen, her vision blurring. She felt herself falling, still holding her child. "Stop," Samuel shouted. Lauren screamed. Victor froze, realization flickering too late. Samuel rushed forward, shoving Victor back with surprising strength. Hannah collapsed onto the rug, coughing, clutching her baby as if her life depended on it. The room erupted in chaos. The Christmas lights blinked steadily, indifferent witnesses to the truth finally exposed. And in that moment, as Hannah struggled for breath, Samuel knew there would be no protecting his son anymore. Only judgment awaited, and it would be merciless. Outside, sirens grew closer, faint but unmistakable. Hannah lay shaking, staring at the ceiling, realizing the life she trusted had nearly killed her. Samuel stood between her and Victor, a barrier forged from guilt and resolve. This house, once a symbol of success, had become evidence. Christmas would never mean innocence again. From this second forward, secrets would collapse, alliances would shift, and the night would demand a reckoning none of them could escape. Each breath Hannah took marked the end of fear and the beginning of consequences that would tear Victor's carefully built world completely apart before dawn broke over Manhattan forever. Silence swallowed the room after Hannah hit the floor, broken only by her ragged coughing and the thin cries of the baby. Samuel knelt beside her, one hand steadying her shoulder, the other hovering near the child, afraid to touch too much. Victor stood frozen, shock draining the color from his face, while Lauren backed away as if the scene itself might stain her. "Call an ambulance," Samuel said sharply. Victor shook his head. "No, not yet." The refusal snapped something in Samuel. He rose slowly, blocking Victor's path, his voice low and dangerous. "You will not decide this." Hannah tried to speak, but her throat burned. Every breath scraped like glass. She focused on counting, on staying conscious, on keeping her arms tight around her daughter. The baby's cries softened, confused, exhausted. Minutes dragged. Victor paced, running his hands through wet hair, eyes darting to the door, the windows, the phone on the counter. Lauren hovered near the wall, whispering that this was all a misunderstanding, that stress made people act out. Samuel ignored her. He checked Hannah's pulse, his jaw clenched. She lost oxygen. Victor snapped, "She's fine. She always overreacts." Samuel turned slowly. "You just tried to kill your wife." The words landed heavy, undeniable. Lauren gasped. Victor opened his mouth, then closed it, fear finally eclipsing anger. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows like a warning. Hannah's vision swam. She felt herself slipping, darkness pulling at the edges. Somewhere far away, she heard Samuel say her name. Firm, anchoring. She forced her eyes open, meeting his gaze. "Stay," he told her quietly. A car engine roared outside, then cut off. Headlights washed across the living room. Victor stiffened. "Who did you call?" Samuel did not answer. The front door opened, letting in cold air and snow. A uniformed police officer stepped inside, followed by a paramedic. Lauren let out a small scream. Victor stumbled backward, shaking his head. "This is a mistake," he said. "Family issue." The officer looked at Hannah on the floor, at the red marks blooming on her neck, at the terrified child in her arms. "Sir, step away." Victor tried to speak again, but the words collapsed. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the sound sharp and final. Lauren began crying, insisting she had nothing to do with this. As Hannah was lifted onto a stretcher, she caught Victor's eyes. There was no apology there, only calculation and rage. The door closed between them. Snow continued falling as the ambulance pulled away. Inside, oxygen filled Hannah's lungs, clarity returning slowly. Fear gave way to something steadier, stronger. This was not the end. It was the moment the truth finally chose a side, and for the first time, it chose hers. Her thoughts drifted to the children she carried, one breathing against her, one waiting inside. She realized survival was no longer about enduring, but about reclaiming dignity. Samuel followed close, his face unreadable, already planning steps she could not yet imagine. Outside Manhattan kept moving, unaware, indifferent, but something fundamental had shifted within its glowing windows. Hannah closed her eyes, letting exhaustion wash over her, trusting that consequences would finally reach the man who hurt her. This night would echo beyond Christmas, beyond scandal, carving a line she would never cross again. Pain had marked her, but it had also awakened strength she never knew she owned, a strength that would carry her forward into judgment, healing, and a future no longer ruled by fear or silence. She breathed deeper now, ready for the truth to keep unfolding, no matter how hard. Hannah drifted in and out of consciousness as the ambulance cut through Manhattan streets. Sirens wailed, lights flashing against storefronts and dark windows, while a paramedic monitored her breathing. The oxygen mask felt heavy, but each breath came easier than before. Her daughter lay secured beside her, finally quiet, tiny fingers curled as if holding on to life itself. At the hospital, bright lights replaced darkness. Doctors moved quickly, voices calm but urgent. Hannah heard words like trauma, oxygen deprivation, high-risk pregnancy. Fear surged again, sharper now. She tried to ask about her baby, about the child inside her, but her voice barely worked. Hours blurred together. Tests were run. Machines beeped steadily. Somewhere beyond the curtain, Samuel waited, his posture rigid, hands clasped like a man preparing for judgment. He replayed the moment over and over, knowing denial was no longer possible. His son had crossed a line that could never be erased. When Hannah finally woke fully, dawn light crept through the window. Her throat burned, but she was alive. A nurse gently explained that both babies were stable for now, though monitoring would continue. Relief flooded her so fast she began to cry silently, tears soaking into the pillow. Samuel entered the room slowly. He looked older, heavier, as if the night had aged him years. "I failed you," he said quietly. Hannah shook her head weakly. "You saved us." He sat beside her, voice steady but filled with resolve. "Victor has been arrested. There will be charges. I won't interfere." The words stunned her. She had expected excuses, negotiations, silence. Instead, she felt something unfamiliar. Justice beginning to move. Over the next hours, reality settled in. Victor's lawyer called, but Hannah refused to speak. Lauren's name surfaced in police questions, her role unraveling piece by piece. Each detail confirmed what Hannah had sensed for months. She had never been imagining it. She had been surviving it. Alone later, Hannah stared at the ceiling, listening to the hospital hum. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future without fear. It terrified her, but it also felt honest. She thought about her children, about raising them in truth instead of tension. Samuel returned that evening with clothes, essentials, quiet efficiency. He promised protection, legal help, financial stability through a trust set aside long ago. "Not charity," he said, "but responsibility." Hannah looked at her sleeping daughter, then placed a hand over her belly. She understood now that endurance was not love, and silence was not safety. The worst had happened, and she was still here. Outside the window, the city glowed golden gray. Christmas night had stolen her illusions, but it had given her something stronger in return: clarity. The road ahead would be painful, public, and relentless, but it would also be free. As exhaustion finally pulled her toward sleep, Hannah accepted one undeniable truth. The powerless woman she had been was gone forever, and nothing Victor faced next would ever compare to the life she was about to reclaim. She did not know how long the fight would last, or how much it would cost, but certainty replaced doubt. Doctors would document everything, reports would be filed, truth would travel faster than lies ever had. Hannah closed her eyes again, breathing steadily, feeling her heartbeat match her daughter's. Whatever came next, she would meet it standing, supported, and unafraid. The silence no longer owned her. It never would again. Justice was awake, and this time, it was not leaving her alone in the dark anymore. Ever. Again. Tonight. Onward. Forever. Now. Here. By the third day, the hospital room felt smaller, heavier, crowded with decisions Hannah never expected to make so soon. Papers waited on the tray table. Doctors explained options, risks, timelines. Each choice carried weight, and every signature felt like crossing another invisible bridge away from the life she once knew. Detectives arrived that morning, 2 of them. Calm voices, practiced questions. Hannah told them everything, from the first locked account to the hand around her throat. Her voice shook only once. The female detective slid a box of tissues closer without interrupting. Every detail mattered now. Across the city, Victor sat in a holding cell, his confidence evaporating. He demanded phone calls, favors, explanations. None came. Samuel refused to answer. For the first time in his life, Victor was alone with consequences he could not outmaneuver. Lauren was questioned separately. Her story unraveled quickly. Texts, emails, calendar entries. She cried, blamed stress, blamed love, blamed Victor. The detectives listened, unmoved. Lies sounded thin under fluorescent lights. Back in the hospital, Samuel met with an attorney in the hallway. Not Victor's attorney. Hannah's. The distinction mattered. Trust documents were drafted. Emergency custody protections prepared. Every step built a wall between Hannah and the man who had nearly ended her life. That afternoon, Hannah signed a temporary restraining order with trembling hands. The paper felt heavier than its weight. It was proof. Protection. A line drawn in ink instead of fear. When she finished, she exhaled deeply, as if releasing a breath she had been holding for years. Later, a social worker visited. Resources were explained, shelters were offered, counseling arranged. Hannah listened carefully, grateful but resolute. She would not hide, she would rebuild. Night fell early. Snow returned, soft against the glass. Hannah watched the flakes drift, thinking about how quiet suffering had almost erased her. She realized survival was not weakness. It was preparation. Samuel sat beside her, silent for a long time. "You don't owe my son anything," he finally said. "Not forgiveness, not silence." Hannah met his eyes. "I won't give him either." In that moment, something settled. Fear loosened its grip. The path ahead was still uncertain, but it was hers. She was no longer waiting to be chosen, spared, or rescued. Down the hall, a baby cried. Somewhere else, a monitor beeped steadily. Life continued, indifferent and relentless. Hannah rested a hand on her belly, feeling movement, a reminder of why she would endure the months ahead. This was not just about what Victor had done. It was about what she would no longer allow. The narrative had shifted. Victim was not the ending. It was the beginning of accountability, healing, and a future shaped by choice instead of control. As the lights dimmed, Hannah closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring hearings, headlines, and pressure. But tonight, for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar and powerful. Safety. And with it, the quiet certainty that justice, once awakened, would continue moving forward, no matter who tried to stop it. She understood the battle would be public and cruel, yet she accepted it without flinching. Support would come from unexpected places, and strength would grow where fear once lived. Tonight marked the transfer of power. No man would decide her worth again. No threat would silence her voice. Tomorrow, the world would see only fragments. She would carry the whole truth forward, steady, protected, and unbroken, ready to face whatever followed with clarity, courage, and resolve. Her future no longer waited for permission, only demanded honesty, endurance, and the courage to choose herself. At last, morning arrived with tension instead of peace. Hannah was discharged under strict instructions, her body bruised but stable, her unborn son monitored closely. Samuel insisted she leave the townhouse forever. A driver waited outside, silent, respectful, as snow melted into dirty slush along the curb. They drove to a quiet apartment Samuel kept for emergencies. It was smaller, plain, safe. Hannah held her daughter as the door closed behind them, locking out the past. For the first time, she exhaled without fear of footsteps approaching. News traveled faster than Hannah expected. Victor's arrest reached his office by noon. Colleagues whispered, phones buzzed. By evening, his suspension became termination. Years of reputation collapsed in a single day. Lauren did not escape either. Her company placed her on leave pending investigation. Friends stopped answering her calls. The glamorous future she imagined evaporated, leaving only shame and panic. Samuel met with federal investigators that afternoon. Files he had collected for years were finally handed over. Financial records, hidden accounts, emails Victor never thought would surface. Each document sealed his fate further. Hannah spent the day resting, surrounded by quiet. She fed her daughter, drank warm tea, listened to the hum of the heater. The absence of tension felt strange, almost suspicious. Peace required adjustment. That night, pain woke her suddenly. Sharp, alarming. Nurses rushed her back to the hospital. Tests followed. Doctors spoke in measured tones. Stress, they said. The baby was strong, but Hannah needed rest, protection, distance from trauma. As she lay there again, fear threatened to return. But something inside her resisted. She had survived worse. She would survive this too. Samuel arrived before dawn. "Victor will be charged formally today," he said. "Assault, domestic violence, financial crimes." Hannah nodded slowly. Each charge felt like weight lifting from her chest. A lawyer visited later, calm, focused. He explained custody, assets, and protection. Hannah listened, asked questions, made decisions. Her voice did not shake. By evening, exhaustion returned, but clarity remained. She stared out the window at city lights, blinking like distant stars. Somewhere, Victor was realizing control had slipped from his hands forever. Hannah placed both hands over her stomach. She whispered promises of safety, honesty, love. These children would grow without fear. This was not revenge. It was balance restored. Actions answered by consequences. silence replaced by truth. As sleep finally came, Hannah understood something profound. She was no longer reacting, she was choosing. And that choice would change everything that followed, shaping a life built on dignity instead of endurance, on peace instead of survival, beginning now. She knew headlines would come, strangers would judge, and Victor would attempt excuses. None of it mattered anymore. What mattered was consistency, safety, and rebuilding slowly. She would attend therapy, learn boundaries, and accept help without shame. Strength, she realized, was communal. It grew when truth was shared. Outside, traffic moved steadily, ordinary life continuing. Hannah felt part of it again. Tomorrow would bring courtrooms and paperwork, but tonight she allowed herself one quiet victory. She had chosen life. She had chosen her children. And that decision, once made, could never be taken from her again, no matter how loudly the past tried to knock. The road ahead remained uncertain, yet fear no longer defined her steps. Trust would return carefully, love would arrive gently. Hannah accepted patience as her new power, knowing healing did not rush. It unfolded. She was ready to walk forward, steady, alert, and free. Nothing would ever silence her truth again. Not courts, not threats, not memories, not fear. Her voice was permanent now, and unstoppable. 2 days later, Hannah sat in a quiet conference room downtown. Sunlight filtered through tall windows dusted with lingering winter gray. She wore borrowed clothes, simple, soft, and nothing like her old life. Across the table, her attorney arranged files with precise, deliberate movements. Samuel sat beside her, silent, present, steady as a pillar. He did not speak unless needed, and that gave Hannah strength. Today was not about emotion, but about facts, timelines, and choices. In another building, Victor faced his first formal hearing. He looked smaller, without his tailored suits and practiced smile. Confidence had drained, leaving irritation, fear, and disbelief. Victor finally understood power did not protect him here. Detectives entered the conference room to record supplemental testimony. Hannah answered calmly, describing the assault, the financial control, the threats. Each word felt heavy but freeing as truth left her body. Samuel watched, knowing this moment defined everything after. Outside reporters gathered, sensing a scandal with real consequences. Victor's name spread quickly through legal and corporate circles. Friends distanced themselves, phones, unanswered support evaporated. When the session ended, Hannah felt exhaustion crash over her, yet beneath it lived a strange, quiet relief. For the first time, she was not explaining away violence. She was naming it. That evening, Samuel drove her back to the apartment. Snow melted along sidewalks and traffic hummed steadily. Hannah watched people hurry past carrying ordinary worries. She realized life kept moving even after catastrophe. Her lawyer called with updates about protective orders and custody. Everything favored Hannah given the evidence. She closed her eyes, letting certainty settle. Later alone, Hannah bathed her daughter, humming softly. The baby splashed, laughed, and reached for her face. Joy cut through pain, reminding Hannah why she fought. She whispered promises of safety, honesty, and love. In that moment, Hannah felt something new growing. Not fear, not anger, but confidence. Victor had taken years from her, but not her future. Tomorrow would bring more hearings, more questions, more strain. Yet Hannah would face them awake, supported, and unafraid. Justice moved slowly, but it was moving. That knowledge settled deep, anchoring her through uncertainty ahead. She prepared dinner, simply ate slowly, and rested. Outside the city, lights flickered, indifferent to private battles. Hannah accepted that healing required patience, repetition, and courage. She would learn again who she was becoming. Across town, Victor sat alone, staring at concrete walls. No phone, no allies, no control remained. For the first time, fear belonged solely to him. Hannah slept that night deeply, despite everything. Dreams were fragmented but not cruel. Morning would come, and she would rise ready. Her story was no longer hidden or denied. It moved forward, carried by truth and resolve. Power had changed hands quietly, permanently. Part 9 ended not with victory, but with momentum. Justice was no longer a hope, but a process. Hannah breathed into that certainty, letting it guide her. Tomorrow, the world would learn more. She would not flinch. The truth had already begun speaking for her. Night settled, fully wrapping the city in cold calm. Hannah held her daughter close, feeling steady warmth. Whatever came next would be faced together. Strength no longer felt like survival but direction. She welcomed sleep, trusting herself completely. Outside sirens faded, replaced by distant traffic. The city exhaled, and so did she. Part 9 closed with resolve instead of fear. Momentum carried forward, unstoppable and earned. Hannah's future no longer waited for permission. It was already moving. Toward light, truth, safety, and freedom. She would walk there willingly. Nothing behind her could pull her back. Not anymore, ever again. End of Part 9. Morning rain washed the city clean, streaking down glass towers as Hannah prepared for court. She dressed slowly, choosing comfort over appearance, her movements careful as her pregnancy advanced. Samuel waited by the door, offering quiet reassurance without questions. The courthouse felt colder than the street. Marble floors echoed with footsteps, and voices dropped to whispers. Hannah held her daughter close, the weight grounding her as cameras flashed briefly before security ushered them inside. Victor entered from the opposite hallway, restrained, eyes hollow. He avoided Hannah's gaze. The distance between them felt final, irreversible. For years he controlled rooms. Today he followed instructions. The judge reviewed charges methodically. Domestic assault, financial coercion, evidence stacked higher with each statement. Hannah listened, heart steady, refusing to look away. This was not spectacle, this was accountability. Victor's attorney argued stress, misunderstanding, momentary loss of control. The words sounded thin, rehearsed. Hannah felt no urge to react. Truth required no defense now. When Hannah was called to speak, the room quieted. She stood, hand resting on her stomach, voice clear despite the tremor beneath it. She spoke of fear normalized, silence mistaken for peace, and the night that nearly ended everything. No tears. Just facts. The judge listened intently. So did the room. Hannah felt years of invisibility lift with every sentence. This was not revenge, it was recognition. The ruling came swiftly. Bail denied. Protective orders extended. Custody granted fully and immediately. Victor's shoulders sagged as reality settled. Control was gone. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Hannah did not answer. Samuel shielded her gently, guiding her through the crowd. The rain had stopped. Light broke through clouds, brief but real. Back at the apartment, Hannah rested, exhaustion deep but clean. Her lawyer called, confirming asset freezes and upcoming indictments. Each update closed another door behind her. That afternoon, she received a message from a women's advocacy group offering support. She accepted. Strength multiplied when shared. As evening fell, Hannah sat by the window watching traffic flow steadily. Life continued. She no longer needed permission to join it. She fed her daughter, feeling gratitude replace dread. The future remained uncertain, but it belonged to her now. She had spoken. She had been believed. Across the city, Victor waited behind locked doors, facing consequences no apology could undo. For the first time, fear had chosen its rightful owner. Night settled quietly. Hannah lay down, hand over her belly, breathing evenly. Tomorrow would bring more steps, but tonight marked a turning point. Justice had spoken, she had survived, and she was ready to keep moving forward, steady and unafraid. This moment did not erase pain, but it reshaped it into purpose. Hannah understood healing would demand time, patience, and help. Therapy sessions, court dates, sleepless nights, and difficult questions waited ahead. Yet none of them frightened her anymore. Fear had lost authority. She trusted herself now. She trusted the evidence, the process, and the quiet strength growing daily. Tomorrow she would schedule counseling, meet advocates, and plan a safer home. Step by step, she would rebuild routines once stolen. The past no longer dictated her choices, it informed them. With every decision, Hannah claimed ground that had been taken from her through silence. She closed her eyes, listening to her child's breathing, steady and sure. In that rhythm she found direction. Whatever storms came next, she would stand rooted. This was not the end of the story. It was the solid beginning of a life defined by safety, truth, and earned peace. She would protect it fiercely, patiently, and forever, without apology or hesitation again from now. The following week brought a different kind of weight. Hannah no longer woke in panic, but responsibility pressed on her chest just as heavily. Court orders protected her, yet decisions filled every hour. Doctors scheduled more monitoring. Lawyers sent documents. Therapists returned calls. Healing was work. Samuel arranged a meeting with a family accountant. Hannah sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug, listening as numbers replaced fear. Trust funds, property rights, emergency access. She learned how thoroughly Victor had controlled her life and how carefully Samuel was undoing that damage. News outlets published restrained articles. No names for Hannah, no photos. Samuel ensured privacy. Victor's company issued a short statement distancing itself. Silence became a form of consequence. At night, Hannah struggled to sleep. Memories returned without warning. A raised voice, a locked phone, a tightening throat. Therapy sessions helped her breathe through them. The therapist reminded her that recovery was not linear. Hannah believed her. One afternoon, a package arrived. Books. A handwritten note from a local support group welcoming her. Hannah felt less alone than she had in years. Community formed quietly, without judgment. Meanwhile, Victor's legal situation worsened. Additional charges surfaced. Financial records revealed patterns of coercion. His attorney requested delays. The judge denied them. Control continued slipping. Samuel visited often, but never hovered. He respected Hannah's autonomy, something Victor never had. Their conversations shifted from crisis to planning. Education funds, new housing, a future shaped intentionally. Hannah took her daughter to a nearby park on a clear afternoon. Cold air flushed her cheeks. Other parents smiled politely. No one knew her story. She liked that. Normalcy felt revolutionary. As weeks passed, Hannah felt stronger physically and mentally. Her pregnancy progressed safely. Each appointment ended with reassurance. Life, fragile yet persistent, moved forward. One evening, Samuel shared something difficult. He had rewritten his will. Hannah and the children were protected regardless of outcomes, not as punishment, as responsibility. Hannah cried quietly, overwhelmed by fairness she never expected. Across town, Victor remained detained, his world shrinking to walls and schedules. Anger replaced denial. He blamed everyone but himself. No one listened. Hannah recognized something shifting inside her. She was no longer reacting to trauma, she was building stability. The difference mattered. Part 11 closed not with drama, but with grounding. Consequences continued unfolding. Support deepened. Hannah stepped into a role she never asked for yet now carried with confidence. Survivor was not her identity. Builder was. She understood that rebuilding meant patience, boundaries, and trust learned slowly. Each morning, she wrote simple goals, drank tea, and practiced breathing exercises taught in therapy. She accepted help without apology and declined advice that felt unsafe. Friends emerged unexpectedly. Neighbors offered smiles. Stability grew through repetition. Hannah prepared a nursery corner, folding clothes, choosing colors, imagining calm nights. She planned childcare, legal follow-ups, and medical visits. None of it felt glamorous. All of it felt real. She noticed her posture changing, shoulders lower, voice steadier. Fear no longer dictated decisions. It informed caution. Accountability replaced hope as her compass. She documented everything, saved messages, followed instructions. Control returned piece by piece. The future remained uncertain, yet no longer threatening. Hannah trusted process over promises. She trusted evidence over words. Most of all, she trusted herself. That trust became the foundation beneath every next step she would take, steady, deliberate, and unafraid. This chapter closed quietly, but momentum continued building beneath the surface, shaping justice, healing, and future love that would arrive later, earned through courage, truth, and choices that honored safety, dignity, and lasting peace for her family. Part 12 began with an unexpected silence. No court dates that morning, no calls, no emergencies. Hannah woke before dawn, listening to her daughter breathe, feeling the baby inside her stretch gently. For once, fear did not arrive first. Samuel arrived late morning, carrying a thin folder. He sat across from Hannah at the small kitchen table and spoke carefully. Victor had agreed to a settlement regarding assets and custody conditions. Not generosity, Samuel explained, but strategy. Victor hoped cooperation would soften sentencing. Hannah listened without interruption. She felt detached, as if hearing someone else's story. When Samuel finished, he waited. The decision was hers. She asked one question. Would this protect the children permanently? Samuel answered honestly. It would secure housing, education funds, medical care, and immediate independence. Criminal charges would continue regardless. Hannah nodded. She signed. That afternoon, Victor was informed. His anger erupted behind concrete walls, but it changed nothing. He had traded control for damage control and still lost everything that mattered. The agreement transferred ownership of the townhouse to Hannah, along with additional properties Victor used to hide money. Accounts were unlocked, audited, documented. Financial chains snapped cleanly. Lauren's name appeared again in disclosures. She had cooperated fully, hoping to escape consequences. Instead, evidence placed her deeper in the scheme. Charges followed. The fantasy ended. Hannah felt no triumph, only relief. Days later, Hannah went into early labor. Stress and exhaustion pushed her body forward without warning. The delivery was difficult but successful. Her son arrived small, strong, breathing steadily. She cried when she heard him. Samuel stood quietly outside the room, tears unhidden. For the first time since that night, joy entered the story without fear attached. Recovery was slow. Hannah stayed surrounded by nurses, advocates, and calm voices. Victor was not allowed near the hospital. Restraining orders held firm. While Hannah healed, the world kept moving. Victor's indictment became public. Headlines remained restrained but clear. Domestic violence, financial crimes, abuse of power. Hannah did not read them. Instead, she focused on feeding schedules, healing stitches, and learning her son's quiet sounds. Life simplified. Survival turned into care. One evening, Samuel brought dinner and news. Victor had accepted a plea deal. Prison time was guaranteed. Appeals waived. Finality approached. Hannah closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She felt the weight lift. Part 12 ended not with vengeance, but with balance restored. Hannah held her children, safe and free, knowing the worst was behind them. Consequences had arrived, and for the first time, peace stayed. That peace did not erase memory, but it softened its edges. Hannah accepted that healing would come in layers, sometimes gentle, sometimes sharp. She scheduled counseling, physical therapy, and legal follow-ups with quiet determination. Each appointment marked progress, measured not in emotion, but stability. Friends reached out slowly. Some apologized for not seeing signs earlier. Hannah accepted kindness without revisiting blame. The past no longer required explanation. At night, she wrote plans in a notebook. Housing repairs, childcare routines, education savings. She learned financial literacy, reading statements carefully, asking questions without shame. Control returned through knowledge. Samuel remained present but respectful, allowing Hannah to lead decisions. His role shifted from protector to witness. Victor's sentencing date approached. Hannah chose not to attend. Closure did not require his presence. Instead, she spent that morning walking slowly through a park, pushing a stroller, feeling sunlight on her face. Ordinary moments became victories. Part 12 closed with Hannah choosing life deliberately, grounded in truth, supported by consequence, and finally free to imagine a future built on safety, love, and earned peace together. Part 13 unfolded quietly, without sirens or courtrooms, but with consequences that reached far beyond headlines. Hannah settled into a fragile routine, learning how to be still without being afraid. Mornings began with feeding schedules, soft sunlight, and the steady breathing of two children who depended entirely on her presence. Samuel visited less often now, by design. He wanted Hannah to feel ownership of her life. When he did come, he brought practical help, not advice. Repairs were scheduled, accounts finalized. Lawyers updated her through email instead of urgent calls. Victor's sentencing arrived without Hannah in the room. She chose absence deliberately. While the judge read years into the record, Hannah walked through a bookstore near the park, her daughter strapped close, her newborn sleeping peacefully. Justice did not require her witness. Lauren's downfall came swiftly after. She lost her job, her license, and her reputation within weeks. Friends disappeared, promises vanished. Cooperation had not saved her. Hannah felt no satisfaction, only clarity. Actions had consequences, even when wrapped in charm. Therapy continued weekly. Hannah spoke about control, silence, and the confusion of love mixed with fear. Some sessions left her drained, others left her lighter. Healing revealed itself slowly, never all at once. One afternoon, Hannah received a letter forwarded from Samuel. It was handwritten, unfamiliar. The words were brief: an apology without excuses. Victor accepted responsibility, not forgiveness. Hannah read it once, then filed it away. Closure did not require response. Life continued building forward. Hannah accepted part-time design work, choosing projects carefully. Independence mattered more than income. She worked during naps, steady and focused, rediscovering confidence in her own judgment. Neighbors became familiar faces. A woman downstairs offered help without questions. A barista remembered her order. These small recognitions rebuilt belonging. At night, Hannah rocked both children, feeling exhaustion settle into something manageable. Fear no longer lived in the quiet. It had been replaced by resolve. Part 13 closed with acceptance rather than celebration. The past had been acknowledged, addressed, and answered. Nothing needed to be proven anymore. Hannah stood at her window one evening, watching city lights blink alive, understanding that survival had transformed into authorship. She was no longer reacting to harm. She was shaping a future deliberately, patiently, and without apology. Justice had arrived not as noise, but as structure. And within that structure, Hannah finally felt free to live fully, honestly, and safely, on her own terms, with nothing left to hide or fear again. The days ahead promised more change, but not chaos. Hannah prepared schedules, therapy notes, and legal folders with calm focus. She trusted routine to build safety. Each completed task strengthened belief in herself. Support arrived quietly through messages, meals, and simple gestures. None of it felt owed. All of it felt earned. Hannah no longer explained her boundaries. She enforced them kindly and firmly. This strength surprised even her. It grew from consistency, not anger. Motherhood anchored her in the present. Each laugh, each cry reminded her why peace mattered. There would be scars, visible and unseen. Hannah accepted them without shame. They marked survival, not failure. As night settled, she turned off the lights, holding gratitude close. Tomorrow would come whether feared or welcomed. Hannah chose welcome. She rested, knowing nothing behind her could claim power again. Part 13 ended with quiet certainty, not applause. The story continued, grounded in truth, protected by choice. Hannah stepped forward, carrying her life with courage, clarity, and earned peace. The future waited, open, steady, and finally hers alone, without fear, control, or silence ever again from anyone anywhere ever. Part 14 opened with change that felt unfamiliar yet welcome. Hannah no longer measured days by court updates, but by diapers, naps, and quiet victories. Morning light filled the apartment as she prepared breakfast, moving carefully but confidently through routines she had built herself. A letter arrived from the district attorney confirming Victor's sentence was final. No appeals, no delays. The words felt distant, like reading about someone else. Hannah placed the letter in a folder and returned to feeding her son. Samuel visited that afternoon, bringing no documents, only coffee. They talked about ordinary things, weather, neighbors, repairs. This normal conversation mattered more than any verdict. It marked distance from chaos. Later, Hannah attended a support group meeting recommended by her therapist. She listened more than she spoke. Stories differed, yet pain echoed. Survival looked different on everyone. Strength did not require comparison. One woman mentioned rebuilding trust after harm. The words stayed with Hannah. Trust, she realized, began internally. She had learned to trust her instincts again. That evening, she walked through Central Park, pushing the stroller slowly. Trees stood bare against the winter sky, yet life moved steadily around her. Joggers passed, couples laughed, children chased pigeons. No one knew her story, and that anonymity felt healing. At home, Hannah reviewed finances calmly. Numbers no longer frightened her. Knowledge replaced fear. Control returned through clarity. A message arrived from a nonprofit offering paid design work for community housing. Hannah accepted. After careful thought, purpose felt grounding. As weeks passed, routine strengthened. Therapy continued. Medical appointments reassured. Each day reinforced safety. Victor's absence became ordinary. His shadow faded. Fear loosened fully. One night, Hannah dreamed without panic for the first time in years. She woke, rested, surprised by peace. Part 14 closed with realization that justice was not an event, but an environment. Safety grew when supported by structure, truth, and self-trust. Hannah stood by the window, watching evening lights appear one by one. She understood healing was not forgetting, but choosing differently. The future remained unwritten, yet no longer threatening. She prepared the nursery carefully, arranging clothes and blankets. Each fold felt intentional, hopeful. For the first time, Hannah allowed herself to imagine love again, not urgently, not desperately, but openly. Love built on respect, patience, and safety. This chapter ended without noise. Strength settled quietly. Hannah stepped forward, steady, grounded, and ready for what came next. She reflected on lessons learned, boundaries defined, and resilience earned. Pain had taught awareness, and awareness shaped strength. Each decision now passed through calm evaluation, not fear. Support remained present through friends, professionals, and quiet routines. Hannah accepted help without surrendering control. Independence and connection finally balanced. The story moved toward renewal. Not rushed, not forced, but natural. Healing unfolded at its own pace. Part 14 closed with momentum steady and earned, carrying Hannah toward a future grounded in safety, truth, and love. She breathed deeply, trusting herself completely. Tomorrow promised challenges, growth, and unexpected joy. Hannah welcomed all of it. With every sunrise, confidence strengthened. The past remained behind, sealed by consequence and choice. Hannah moved forward, carrying wisdom, courage, and hope for her children. Nothing ahead felt impossible anymore. Life felt honest, safe, open. This sense of peace marked true victory beyond courts or punishment. Hannah owned her life. It would continue growing quietly, day by day. She smiled gently and turned toward tomorrow, ready to live freely, fully, and without fear again. Her journey continued strong and unbroken. This ending became a beginning. For Hannah and her children, peace was finally theirs. Forever, starting now. Together. Part 15 arrived without warning, carried in a quiet email Hannah almost ignored. A local community legal center was hosting a small private gathering for survivors rebuilding their lives. No media, no speeches, just shared stories. Hannah read the message twice, then closed her laptop. For hours she thought about it while folding laundry, feeding the baby, rocking her daughter to sleep. Something inside her shifted. By evening, she replied yes, surprising herself with how calm the decision felt. The day of the luncheon, Hannah dressed simply. Nothing borrowed, nothing symbolic, just clothes that felt like her. Samuel offered to watch the children, but Hannah declined gently. She arranged childcare herself. Independence mattered now. Walking into the small cafe space, she felt nervous, but not afraid. The room was warm, filled with soft voices and ordinary faces. No one stared. No one asked questions. She sat, listened, and slowly exhaled. Stories unfolded naturally, some painful, some hopeful. One man spoke about rebuilding trust with his children. A woman described learning finances after years of control. Hannah did not speak at first. She absorbed every word, realizing how universal silence had been. When she finally shared a few sentences, her voice stayed steady. No pity followed, only understanding. That acceptance settled deeply in her chest. During the break, a man approached politely, not intrusively. His name was Ethan Walker. He worked as a civil rights attorney, often volunteering his time for survivors. He did not ask for details. He commented on the coffee, the weather, the quiet strength in the room. Conversation felt easy, unforced. Hannah noticed that. It mattered. They spoke briefly before returning to their seats. Nothing dramatic, nothing promised, just warmth. For the first time in years, Hannah felt seen without being evaluated. When the gathering ended, they exchanged a simple goodbye. No numbers. No expectations. That evening, Hannah returned home lighter. She did not tell Samuel about Ethan immediately. There was no need. The experience itself felt complete. She tucked her children into bed and stood by the window, watching the city glow. Something new had entered her life, not as rescue, but as possibility. In the weeks that followed, Hannah focused on routine again. Therapy, work, motherhood, yet something subtle changed. She smiled more easily. She noticed beauty without guilt. Healing had reached a new layer. Part 15 closed, not with romance, but with readiness. Hannah understood now that love could arrive without chaos, that safety and connection were not opposites. She did not rush forward or retreat, she simply remained open. For the first time, the future did not feel like something to survive. It felt like something she was allowed to choose, carefully, honestly, and on her own terms. Part 16 unfolded slowly, marked by intention rather than urgency. Hannah continued building her life piece by piece, protecting routine like sacred ground. Mornings began with quiet feedings, sunlight across the kitchen floor, and a growing sense of stability she trusted. Ethan reappeared weeks later through a brief email. He asked politely if she wanted coffee sometime, no pressure, no assumptions. Hannah read it carefully, noticing how calm she felt. She replied yes, suggesting a public cafe near the park. They met on a mild afternoon. Conversation flowed gently. Ethan spoke about his work without dramatizing it. Hannah shared about design projects and motherhood. Neither rushed. Boundaries were respected naturally. What surprised Hannah most was her body's response. No tension, no alertness, just ease. She recognized that as progress. They met again weeks later, then again. Walks replaced dinners, daytime conversations replaced late nights. Trust grew through consistency, not intensity. Meanwhile, life continued. Hannah finalized housing renovations. Therapy shifted from crisis to growth. She laughed more, slept deeper, breathed freely. Samuel noticed the change, but said nothing. Respect defined their bond now. Victor faded further into absence. Sentencing paperwork finalized. No appeals, no contact. One evening, Hannah and Ethan sat on a park bench watching children play. Her daughter toddled nearby, supervised by a caregiver. Ethan asked permission before pushing the stroller. Hannah said yes, without hesitation. That moment mattered. Ethan never tried to replace anything. He showed up, he listened, he stayed steady. Months passed, seasons changed. Hannah's confidence solidified. Love arrived quietly, without demands. Part 16 closed with realization. Healing did not mean forgetting. It meant choosing differently with clarity and courage. Hannah stood, rooted in safety, open to connection, guided by self-trust. The future no longer felt uncertain, it felt earned. She walked forward calmly, holding possibility instead of fear. Growth required patience. Hannah learned to recognize red flags without panic and green flags without disbelief. She practiced saying no and meaning yes. Her therapist reminded her that safety could feel unfamiliar before it felt normal. Ethan remained consistent. He respected schedules, children, and boundaries. He never raised his voice. He never rushed decisions. Over time, Hannah allowed affection to grow slowly, measured by trust. They shared ordinary moments, grocery shopping, coffee refills, quiet laughter. Each moment rewired something inside her. Part 16 ended with grounded hope. Not fantasy, not rescue, just partnership forming carefully, honestly, and with mutual respect. This phase felt different because it was chosen. Hannah trusted herself to pause whenever needed. Love did not demand sacrifice of safety, it complemented it. She understood now that real connection expanded life instead of shrinking it. Her children became the center of every decision. She watched them thrive in calm routines. Laughter replaced tension. Home felt warm. Part 16 affirmed that healing could include joy without guilt. Hannah stepped forward, steady, open, and whole. The journey continued quietly. Strength remained constant. Fear stayed behind. Hannah embraced the life she built deliberately. Each sunrise reinforced her choices. Each night confirmed her peace. She no longer questioned her worth. She lived it daily with clarity and courage. Part 16 stood as proof that endings can heal. Hannah welcomed what came next without fear. She trusted tomorrow. She trusted herself. That trust was enough. Life moved forward steadily. Hannah followed willingly. This chapter closed fully and calmly. No more fear remained. Only peace stayed. Always. Moving on. Together. Into the future now. With love. And truth. And safety. Forever forward. Step by step. She smiled. Breathing free. At last. Complete peace. Now. Here. Safe. Alive. Whole. Enough. End. Part 17 began with a moment Hannah never imagined she would welcome. She received a call confirming Victor's transfer to a long-term correctional facility upstate. The case was officially closed. No further hearings, no lingering threats. The chapter ended completely. Hannah stood still after the call ended, phone resting in her palm. She felt no joy, no anger, only release. The weight she had carried unconsciously finally lifted. She exhaled deeply, realizing her body no longer braced for impact. That afternoon, she took the children to Central Park. The air was crisp, sunlight filtering through trees just beginning to bud. She spread a blanket, letting her daughter crawl freely while her son slept beside her. Laughter drifted from nearby families. Life felt ordinary. That ordinariness felt miraculous. Ethan joined them later, carrying coffee and pastries. He asked before sitting, before touching anything. Hannah smiled at the familiarity of his care. They talked about small things. Work, weather, a book he was reading. Peace lived comfortably between them. As weeks passed, Hannah noticed her reflexes soften. She no longer startled at raised voices nearby. She slept through the night more often. Therapy sessions focused on growth instead of recovery. One evening, Ethan asked if he could cook dinner for her and the children. Hannah hesitated briefly, then agreed. He prepared a simple meal, cleaned afterward, and left without expectation. Trust deepened quietly. Samuel visited less frequently now, confident in Hannah's independence. When he did come, pride softened his usually reserved expression. He saw stability, not survival. Hannah's work expanded slowly. She chose projects aligned with her values. Independence felt empowering rather than overwhelming. Part 17 marked a shift. Hannah no longer identified herself through what she escaped. She was defined by what she built. One night after the children slept, she and Ethan sat quietly on the couch. No television, no agenda, just presence. Ethan spoke gently about his respect for her boundaries, her strength, her patience. Hannah listened, emotion rising unexpectedly. She realized then she was ready. Not to rush, not to replace, but to choose. Weeks later, Hannah introduced Ethan formally to Samuel. The meeting was simple, honest, respectful. Approval was not demanded, only transparency offered. Samuel accepted quietly. Life continued with consistency. Love grew through action. Safety remained constant. Part 17 closed with certainty. Hannah stood firmly in her life, grounded, whole, and open. Fear no longer whispered, control no longer tempted. She trusted herself completely. The future stretched forward without threat. Love did not feel dangerous anymore. It felt earned. Hannah watched her children sleep that night, gratitude settling deep. She had protected them. She had protected herself. Tomorrow would bring ordinary challenges. She welcomed them. Nothing ahead felt impossible. This chapter ended with quiet triumph. Hannah had reclaimed her life fully, and she was ready for what came next. The story moved forward with strength, clarity, and peace. Exactly as it should. Always. Here. Now. Free. End Part 17. Part 18 arrived with a question Hannah had once believed would never return to her life. It did not come with drama or pressure. It came quietly, on an ordinary afternoon, wrapped in calm certainty instead of fear. Ethan invited Hannah to walk with him through a small botanical garden near the river. Spring had fully arrived. Flowers opened without urgency. Children laughed nearby. Life felt steady. They moved slowly, her stroller between them, conversation light and unforced. They sat on a bench overlooking the water. Ethan did not reach for her immediately. He waited, just as he always did. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "I want to be clear," he said. "You never owe me anything. Not time, not love, not a future." Hannah felt her chest tighten, not from fear, but from recognition. She nodded. "I love the life you've built," Ethan continued. "I love how carefully you protect it. And if you ever choose to share it with me more fully, I would honor that for the rest of my life." He reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately. Not a grand gesture, just intention. He held out a simple ring, understated, thoughtful. "I'm asking," he said, "only if this feels safe." Hannah stared at the ring, then at him. Her body stayed calm. No alarms, No racing thoughts, just clarity. She thought of the past, of silence mistaken for love, of fear mistaken for loyalty. And then she thought of now, of steady mornings, of laughter, of trust built gently over time. Yes, she said. The word came without hesitation. Ethan exhaled, emotion softening his face. He slipped the ring onto her finger carefully, as if it carried responsibility, not ownership. Hannah felt something settle deep inside her. Peace did not leave. It stayed. They sat quietly after, watching the water move. Nothing needed to be said. When Hannah told Samuel later that evening, he listened, then smiled in a way she had never seen before. "You chose well," he said simply. The children adapted easily. Ethan did not rush roles. He followed Hannah's lead, building trust with consistency. Love became visible in small actions. Planning the future felt different this time. No pressure, no urgency, just intention. Part 18 closed with celebration that felt grounded. Hannah did not feel rescued, she felt accompanied. She looked at her life and recognized it fully. The pain had been real, the healing had been earned, and the love she stepped into now came without fear. For the first time, Hannah understood that happiness was not loud. It was safe. She stood at the window that night, ring catching the light, children sleeping peacefully behind her. The future no longer asked her to prove strength, it invited her to live. And she accepted. Part 19 unfolded a year later, on another winter evening, softer and brighter than the last. Snow fell again over Manhattan, but this time it felt gentle, almost kind. Hannah stood in front of a small mirror, adjusting a simple dress, her movements calm, practiced, steady. The children laughed in the living room, their voices warm and unafraid. The apartment glowed with quiet celebration. No extravagance, no spectacle, just family, safety, and intention. Ethan moved through the space, preparing last details, careful not to rush anything. He paused often, checking in, always asking. Hannah noticed and smiled. Samuel arrived early, carrying nothing but himself. He hugged Hannah briefly, respectfully, pride clear in his eyes. This moment meant more than any courtroom victory. It meant continuity. Friends gathered slowly. Neighbors, colleagues, people who had walked alongside Hannah without demanding explanations. No one spoke of the past unless Hannah did first. Tonight was not about survival, it was about arrival. When the officiant began, the room quieted naturally. No dramatic music, no long aisle. Just Hannah stepping forward with her children beside her, grounded, present, and unafraid. She felt no tightening in her chest, no urge to escape. Only certainty. Ethan spoke first. His vows were simple. Commitment, respect, safety, partnership. He promised consistency more than passion, patience more than intensity. Hannah listened, tears steady but not overwhelming. When it was her turn, Hannah spoke clearly. She did not mention pain, she mentioned choice. She promised honesty, boundaries, and shared responsibility. Love, she said, was not sacrifice of self, it was protection of truth. They exchanged rings quietly, no applause yet, just breath, presence, completion. When the ceremony ended, the room filled with soft laughter and tears. Children ran freely. Food was shared. Stories unfolded. Life moved naturally, unforced. Hannah watched Ethan kneel to her daughter's level, listening intently as she spoke. Her son slept peacefully nearby. This was the life she had fought for without knowing its shape. Later, standing near the window, Hannah looked out at the city lights reflecting on snow. Another Christmas season approached. This time, she felt no fear attached to memory. The past had lost its power. Victor's name no longer surfaced in her thoughts. Consequences had been served. Justice had closed that door completely. What remained was responsibility and joy, balanced carefully. Hannah understood marriage now as choice renewed daily, not obligation enforced by fear. As the night wound down, Ethan joined her quietly. No words were needed. The children slept. The city hummed. Peace held. Part 19 closed with fulfillment, burned slowly, deliberately, and without illusion. Hannah did not feel saved. She felt whole. She had lost a life and built another. This one stood on truth. Tomorrow would bring ordinary challenges. She welcomed them. This ending was not loud. It was real. and it was hers. Together, at last. Part 20 closed the story without noise but with certainty. Hannah woke early in their home, sunlight touching the walls, children breathing softly nearby. Peace was no longer fragile, it was practiced. She prepared breakfast slowly, watching Ethan help the kids with patience and humor. There was no tension in the room, no fear of raised voices, no walking on invisible glass. Love lived here quietly, proven through daily choices. Outside, the city moved as always. Somewhere beyond their life, Victor served his sentence, facing consequences shaped by his own actions. Hannah did not think of him often. Justice had done its work. Memory no longer carried power. Later that day, Hannah walked alone through the neighborhood, reflecting on the path she had traveled. She remembered the woman she once was, silent and afraid, believing endurance meant loyalty. That version of herself deserved compassion, not judgment. Pain had not broken her, it had instructed her. Through it, she learned boundaries, clarity, and self-trust. She learned that love without safety was not love at all. She learned that dignity was non-negotiable. Hannah returned home, grounded. She held her children close, grateful for ordinary moments once unimaginable. She understood now that reward did not always arrive as wealth or praise. Sometimes it arrived as calm mornings, honest laughter, and the ability to sleep without fear. Her life stood rebuilt on truth. The past had been acknowledged, answered, and released. No loose ends remained, no silence waited to be filled. Ethan joined her later, and they planned nothing dramatic, just tomorrow. School schedules, work projects, family dinners. Their future rested in responsibility shared, not promises shouted. This was the justice audiences longed for. The wrongdoer faced consequence. The survivor gained safety, love, and dignity. Balance returned. Hannah knew challenges would still come. Life never stopped testing strength, but she trusted herself completely now. She trusted the life she chose and the people she allowed near. As evening settled, Hannah stood at the window one last time, watching lights flicker across the city. She felt no urge to look back. Everything behind her had been resolved. Part 20 ended with healing made visible. Not fantasy, not revenge. Just truth, accountability, and renewal. Hannah turned away from the glass, joining her family, carrying forward wisdom earned through pain and courage. Her story did not end in tragedy, it ended in wholeness. And that was enough. It honored cause and effect without exaggeration, rewarding patience and integrity. Hannah gained a marriage built on consent, children raised in safety, and a voice that would never be silenced again. The antagonist gained isolation, accountability, and time to face himself without excuses. That balance satisfied the heart. The lesson was simple and lasting. Power abused collapses. Love grounded in respect endures. Women are not weak when they leave harm. They are strong because they choose life. Hannah carried this truth forward gently, teaching it through example rather than speech. Her children would grow knowing calm, boundaries, and kindness. They would never confuse fear with love. This ending closed every door that once trapped her and opened every window ahead. The audience could breathe, knowing justice held and healing followed. Nothing remained unfinished. Nothing felt forced. The story rested complete, fair, and human, leaving space for tomorrow to arrive naturally, bright, and deserved. It affirmed hope, responsibility, and closure, proving that consequences matter and quiet resilience wins in the end. The final image remained steady, loving, and earned, allowing viewers to feel relief, catharsis, and trust in justice restored. Peace stood unquestioned, permanent, and deserved, closing the journey completely. So, the story has come to an end. And if you're still here with us right now, really still here until this moment, then something in this story touched your heart in a quiet but real way. Maybe it reminded you that pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers for years. And maybe it showed you that strength isn't about enduring harm, but about choosing truth, safety, and dignity when you finally can. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Healing begins the moment we stop trying to control what broke us and start reclaiming ourselves. This story isn't just about justice for wrongdoing. It's about cause and effect in life. Harm creates consequences, Silence has a cost, and choosing yourself is not selfish, it's necessary. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Real freedom comes when fear no longer decides for you. If this story resonated with you, if it reflected something you've lived or something you're still healing from, please know you're not alone. Your story matters too. If this message spoke to your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. We tell these stories not just to entertain, but to heal together.